Hey everyone, Richard Razor Sharp here, and this is kind of, if you want to say, one of my concluding videos for this Camera for Barbers series, where I want to give you some options that you may want to consider if you're looking to maybe pick up a camera and lens kit to do your photography or videography. If you're thinking of starting a YouTube channel, or you just want to do videos of your cuts or take really good quality photos of your haircuts that you can use for your website, social media, promotion, etc. I want to give you a couple of options that I think could be really good for you that aren't crazy expensive. As you know, with cameras you can spend thousands of pounds. I want to give you some kind of budget options, but really good quality in terms of photography and videography. So I hope you find this useful. I'm going to go on my computer now. We'll have a look at some of these options and I'll give you a bit of a breakdown of why I'm giving you these options as well. So guys, as always, I'll ask if you could like, subscribe to the video, share it with your fellow colleagues, barbers, or people who are just thinking about getting into photography. Be much appreciated. All right guys, let's get into it. Okay, so let's have a look at some more affordable options if you want to get a camera set up for photography, videography as a barber. On my YouTube channel, you probably already know, but I did do I've done a series of videos on this subject of barbers and cameras. Really recommend viewing them, share it with your colleagues, with friends who are into barbering or are thinking about getting, say, cameras, even just for leisure purposes. They may not even be barbers. These videos will be useful, and I'd love to get the views up on these on these videos, because there's some really valuable content in there that will give you a very quick insight into how to choose what camera to go for if you're thinking about buying one. Okay, let's get down to business. So in the UK, we have a website called MPB. There may be a US version or a different kind of retailer in the country you are in, but MPB is like a used camera specialist, where people will trade in cameras and then they sell them on at used prices, and you can get some really good deals there. So we'll have a look there, and then we'll also have a look at YouTube as well. So I'm going to give you two options in terms of camera setups. One is a Canon option and the other one is a Sony option, and it'll give you a bit of an idea of maybe what you may want to go for and the kind of price that you will pay. So in regards to Canon, what I want to look at is a Canon 80D. Now, I actually owned one of these. And before I moved to a mirrorless camera body, Canon body. So Canon 80D, as you can see, the price ranges from £240 up to £539, and this will be based on condition. So as you can see, £539 means like new, and then the £244 would be in what they'd call a well-used condition. Okay, but if we have a look at the different condition options they've got, so if we look at good, let's see what good comes in at. Okay, so we're talking what? 429, 400. Okay, so roughly you're talking around about £400 in a good condition. And in the shutter count, the higher the shutter count, the more usage the camera has had. Okay, so you ideally want to try and go for a lower shutter count if you're buying a used camera. Okay, so that's something that's important to note. So if we go into the Canon 80D, let me just give you some quick insights as to why I'm suggesting this as a potential entry option into cameras for photography and videography. So this is just a design of the Canon 80D. As you can see, this one has had some usage, obviously you can see there from the markage. Okay, but okay, why am I suggesting this as an option? So a few things. One, this camera has a 24 megapixel body, so you can get high-res photos. You could blow the photos up really big, and still the photos will look sharp. So that's one key aspect. The other key thing, and particularly for people who want to do video, this camera has what's called a dual pixels autofocus, which enables a really smooth focus, but also really good tracking. So if you're recording somebody moving or people moving, it really tracks and shifts the autofocus really well. And I've seen this in action. Okay, so That's dual auto pixel autofocus. Then the other thing that's key is this has a flip out display. So if you are recording content of yourself, maybe you're sitting down in front of a camera, like I do in a lot of my videos, then having a flip out display is super useful. Prior to having this camera, I had I think it was a Canon 550D, which didn't have a flip out lens, so it made it a lot harder to record content. Trying to set it up where it was focused on my face, it was a lot more work. So I highly recommend this for having a flip out display. And then also Canon tends to have more affordable lens options. And then you've also got 80 megapixel video recording, which it does at 24 frames per second, sorry, and 30 frames per second, which is still decent enough in our modern world and for how people consume content on smartphones and devices like that. Yeah, it's still good enough. Okay, so that's the Canon 80D as a body. Now, in terms of lenses, I'm going to give you two options. So the first option is what is referred to affectionately as the Nifty 50, which is a 50mm 1.8 aperture lens. Okay, now Canon has two versions of this. You have the first version here, and then you have the second version, which I would recommend going. Oh, sorry, here it is. Sorry, the second version, which I recommend going for, which has STM, which means a step-in motor, which enables really smooth autofocus and a more quiet autofocus versus the first version here. All right, so I'd certainly recommend go for the second version. Okay, and as you can see, it's coming in at around £81, which is really good value for money. This is a great lens when you're dipping your toes into photography, videography. This lens will do it for you. It will give you great photos, great images, as well as great videography. Now, one thing that's important to note about the Canon 80D is that it has a crop sensor, which means that when you attach, for example, this 50mm lens to the Canon 80D, your focal length isn't actually 50mm, because the Canon 80D has a 1.6 crop factor. So what you have to do is take 50mm times 1.6, which comes in at around 80mm focal length. Okay, so that's important to note. So any lens you attach to a Canon 80D, it will have a crop factor of 1.6, which you times versus the focal length of the actual lens. So that's lens number one. Lens option number two is a great lens that Canon brought out, affordable lens. If I remember, I think it's the 24mm 2.8 aperture. This is what is referred to as a pancake lens. Okay, and once again, they have a STM version of this lens. Okay, for that smooth autofocus. Right, so it looks like a very flat lens. It doesn't look very thick. Once again, pricing, look, we're talking around what, £87 in excellent condition. Okay, so similar to the 50mm. So now with that 1.6 crop factor on the Canon 80D, this would come in at around about, I think it's 38mm focal length. Okay, so it won't look as close to the subject as the 50mm Canon 1.8 lens would. Okay, and this has an aperture of 2.8, which is still good enough. Lets good lighting for photography and videography. So if we look at that from a pricing perspective on MPB, we're talking in the region of around, say, what, £600. But let's have a quick look at eBay, because I've actually seen some bargains on there that you can get. So here's an option I'd searched for earlier. So I just simply typed in Canon 80D, and this was an option that came up. Look, this is £400. Buy it now. It says in perfect condition, as you can see here. I mean, this is in literally an absolute mint condition. Okay, so on eBay, you could probably even grab yourself an even better bargain and say pay about £400 for the 80D body. And then once you add on your lens, you're talking about £500, which may sound like a lot of money, but in the world of photography, videography, it's not a lot. That is budget, because you could easily end up spending thousands upon thousands on cameras and on lenses as well. Okay, so that's Canon. Let's look at now a Sony option. So the Sony option I'd recommend is the Sony A7 Mark II. So I've just typed in Sony A7, and this is the option that I'm talking about. So Mark II, if we go into here, as we can see, in excellent condition, coming in a bit more expensive than the Canon at around, say, just under £600 in excellent condition. If we have a look at good condition, all right, it's coming in at, say, £500. So we're talking roughly, based on MPB, about £100 more than the Canon. Okay, now quickly looking at some kind of the key aspects of the Sony, just give you kind of a quick rundown of some benefits. So firstly, the number one benefit probably here is that this is a full frame camera body. So once again, if you're using a 50 millimeter lens, it will show at 50 millimeters. If you are using a shorter lens, say a 24 millimeter, or a longer lens like 85 millimeter, you're seeing the true length. Okay, there's no crop factor on it. I hope I've explained all of that well. If I haven't, go on YouTube and you can and you search about crop factors and you'll get a good understanding of it. Okay, so say this is coming in at what, £500. Other good things: build quality, got a really good solid build quality. It's a smaller design than the Canon. You'll notice it's kind of thinner, smaller, more compact design, and then it's still got a 24 megapixel sensor, so great photos. But one benefit it does have over the Canon, it does 1080p video recording, but it does it at 60 frames per second as well as 30 and 24. So 60 frames per second, higher quality, a bit sharper as well, so that's a plus side. But one of the major cons of the Sony A7 Mark II is it doesn't have a flip out display. So if you wanted to record content of yourself in almost like interview style, that's going to be a little bit more tricky, because you're going to have to set it up to get the autofocus right on your lens and stuff like that. It's a little bit more work versus having a flip out lens where you can see exactly how everything looks. Okay, and then the other thing is that lenses tend to be a bit more expensive on the Sony side, and they have less affordable lenses from what I've seen. So let's have a look at the lens option I would suggest based on my knowledge. Okay, so I'm going to recommend Sony 50 millimeter, the FE version. Once again, it's 1.8 aperture, so lets in lots of light. This will be a good option for portrait photography as well as videography, as well. As you can see, like new, coming in around, say, £140, in excellent condition, 134. There's no good options there. So okay, as you can see, once again, a bit more expensive than the Canon variant, the Canon option, but once again, this is a good all-rounder lens. So let's quickly have a look at eBay and see what we find there. So I had a little look earlier and I found this body only £425, which I have to say is really good price based on what I can see of the condition. This looks to be in excellent condition. I mean, the shutter count on this is really low, which is excellent. That's what you want, to have as low a shutter count as possible. But I mean, this looks like it's in really good condition. It's been well looked after, which is what you want. Now, okay, what I don't see here is, I don't see if it has charging cables or included. So let's just have a quick look at the description. Okay, comes with okay, so it does come with a strap, and it says a non-original battery, but it has no box or charger. So you would need to buy a charger as well, which I have to say, to be fair, that's not going to cost you a lot of money. That's not expensive purchase. So this is a really good buy for £425 from what I can see. But yeah, you can see actually you can pick these up for cheaper on eBay as well. I did have a look at the lenses, and the lenses were coming in at similar price to MPB as well. Okay, so I hope that gives you a bit of an insight. What I might also suggest is, if you wanted to get a bit of a comparison, obviously on YouTube, you could type in, let's see, Canon. I've done a little search earlier. Canon 80D versus Sony A7 Mark II. You've got videos here which gives you a bit of a comparison. Have a look, see what you think. But that's just my take on, say, an affordable budget, say about £500 to £600 camera setup to do good photography and videography. So I hope you found this useful, and I'll maybe do another video to give you some more expensive options that you could go for if you want to maybe say up the quality of your equipment a bit more. So guys, hope you found this useful. Please like, subscribe as always, and until next time, take care of yourselves. Peace.